Welcome to The Incredible Messenger, a blend of real-world stories, expert insights, and proven strategies that keep our families, communities, and cities safe and healthy. Moving beyond rhetoric and politics to practical solutions and community safety, here's your host, Jonathan McMillan.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining in to another episode of the Credible Messenger podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan McMillan. And as always, I have a person who is difficult for me to introduce him in the context of a podcast because I know him so well. Is this a person who I worked with directly for many years, still work with him in many ways. As we were out there doing direct services. This intro may be a little bit longer than the typical ones because I really want you all to know why I invited this guest onto the show. When I first started working for the city and county of Denver as a outreach worker or a gang intervention specialist, there really wasn't a thorough job description. And the training, there was even less of that. And so what the manager of the program did was sent me on a ride along to go out with one of the outreach workers. And I rode out with this guy, and the way that he was doing it was not my vision of the job. He had aspirations and ambitions to be involved in law enforcement. So as I rode along with him, he was going to these different locations, halfway houses and schools, and essentially collecting intel. And those are his words, collecting intel and sharing what he thought was valuable intel and actually misinformation, because he really didn't have an understanding of the gang culture, of the culture of the young people who we were working with. And I went back to the manager and said, man, if this is the job, you hired the wrong person. This probably would be my last day. And he looked at me and he said, oh, man, I was scared this was going to happen, but you know what, give it one more shot. I'm going to send you out with another one of our outreach workers. And he sent me out with my guest, who has become my friend, who's become my brother, who's become a mentor, because the way I observed him interacting with the young people who were on his caseload, the way that I saw him developing in fortifying some really authentic relationships became essentially the model of how I showed up to do that job. And so with no further delay, I want to introduce Joe Aragon, Pastor Joe, as I call him, Brother Joe, Hermano Joe, my guy. Joe, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, man, it's great to be here. Quite an introduction. I remember that guy. I remember him. I remember you going out with him, then I remember you telling me what it was like the contrast between his style and my style. So,
yeah, I remember clearly rolling with you, sitting in your passenger car, and again, just watching you interact with your guys. And I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Like, I think I said it probably 12 times that day. Like, man, this was nothing like the other day. I could do this. So again, I mean, it goes without saying, but I want to say it, man. I truly appreciate you for who you are to me personally, just as much. I appreciate who you are and how you show up for the young people who, and not just young people, as in youth, but even young adults and the older adults, because you have ability to work with essentially anyone in this priority population. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started in the work? Who is Pastor Joe?
all right. Pastor Joe Aragon. I am the pastor and CEO of a faith-based nonprofit known as The Mix. We started off as a gang outreach, invited kids to come, or young men to come to church where we were going to church. And they said, this is our church. So we're playing basketball. And we'd have a halftime where we'd stop and minister for about 10, 15 minutes. And then we'd go back to playing basketball. It's called hoops and reps. and we had a DJ playing the music real loud. Gang members from all over the place. We had to use hand wands when they came in the door, searching for knives and guns and all that cool stuff. I'm a resident of Denver. I'm a native of Denver. I was that kid whose mom lived in Park Hill and the East Side, kind of back and forth. But my grandparents lived in Northwest Denver. So as a really little kid, I remember third grade riding the bus from Park Hill to Northwest Denver. So I was that kid, that one little kid all by himself on the bus. Uh, but I built strong relationships throughout all of them communities as a child. Um, Graduate of North High School, U.S. Navy veteran, where this story of my career began. I'm kind of weird to do um, gang outreach, intervention, prevention as a military person, but I'll tell you that story here in a little bit. Um, but really, I'm a husband, I'm a father of three. I love the Denver Broncos, the Denver Nuggets. I'm a home team kind of guy.
Yeah.
I love my city. I have a really strong heart for young men who don't have strong alpha males in life.
Mhm.
And I would say when people ask me, well, what do you think the biggest problem is? And I always tell them, I don't think you're going to like my answer. We have a lack of alpha males in the home, a lack of godly men in the home, raising these boys to be young men and then to be men. Uh, and no discredit to the many amazing single mothers out there doing all that they can to raise these boys, but as awesome as they are, every boy who grows up to be a man will probably testify to this. I needed that man in my life.
Mhm.
And we all know we need that one or two or three to be surrounded by men who can teach us to be men. And so that's where I go. So I want to be that man in any life of young men that I meet, young men, older men. I want to be that man who can pour into somebody's life some wisdom. And I'm always a guy who is teachable, and I always want to learn as well. So if I get the opportunity to sit down with that man who can pour into me, man, I'm excited about that because no way have I reached my pinnacle, and I'm not walking on water. I haven't made it there yet. I'm still trying to get there, but I'm a work in progress.
I appreciate that, everything that you said there. And before we go a little bit further into how you got started in the work, I want to highlight a point that you brought up. We have mothers out here, young mothers who are doing their best to give their young men what they need in order to thrive, survive and thrive. And oftentimes, as great of a job as they're doing, the missing component is another positive male in that life, right? Um, I remember when I had young men on my caseload, there would be days I would just take them to the barbershop, right? And we would just sit there for hours listening to the conversation because I wanted them to observe how do other men, whatever their occupations are, how do other men interact with each other? What are the type of conversations that grown men who are doing well in life, how do they interact with each other outside of the social groups that they're normally hanging out with, normally hanging out with their homeboys and other gang members, and their homeboys are just as lost as they are.
Mm.
So when they're having those conversations, they're pretending to be grown men. And so it's just, again, I don't want to belabor the point. Having them observe how grown men interact with one another and types of conversations and the casual jewels that are dropped in the barbershop, right? That was helping shape their minds about what masculinity truly is and what a responsible male looks like. So I appreciate you bringing that point up. Um, I want to get into the story, bro. How did you get involved in this work? What got you started?
After graduation of high school, was 5 years for me. I was that kid that dropped out of school in the ninth grade and figured out this rough street life isn't going to be for me. I'm not going to work these jobs and drug deal all my life and hustle on the streets and end up either dead or in prison. That's not the road I wanted to be on. So I went back to high school, graduated. It was rough. I got kicked out of East High School, North High School, Random High School, North Glen High School. I made my rounds until I finally settled down and graduated at North High School. Joined the Navy. Pretty much believed that was going to be my career. Ended up going to Desert Storm, and I came home. I had 40 days of leave time, and I came home during that time. And the assistant principal at my alma mater, North High School, I ran into him at the grocery store, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about coming to the school and talking to the kids and telling them your story? You just came home from Desert Storm." I said, "How many kids?" He said, "Oh, a classroom, about 20, 25 kids." I said, "All right, I'll do that." I had never done public speaking, ever. So I'm like, what am I going to talk about? I had no idea. I was trying to figure out what am I going to talk about. I don't want to sound like an idiot. So I prayed. The only thing I knew how to do back then was pray. And I go, and he takes me in the auditorium. I said, "I thought you said a classroom." Auditorium's full. And he puts me on a chair in the middle of the stage with a spotlight on my face. All I can see is the first one or two rows of students, but I know it's packed. Some of my friends, that I knew are still there now. They're seniors in high school, and they're shouting me out and all that cool stuff. And I'm like, oh, Lord, what am I going to say? So I actually spoke to them about patriotism. I remember it clearly because I remember we're not grateful for the country that we live in. And I've now been to countries all over the world that are third world countries. And kids are begging to go to school. Their parents would die for their kids to go to school. I mean, literally die for their kids to go to school. They're living in homes that have mud floors. They're built out of wood that, like when we were kids, we used to build clubhouses out of wood that we'd find in the alleyways and stuff. And families are living in them houses. No electricity, no heat, no plumbing. I don't think here in America, we take all those things for granted. We take our education for granted. It hit me. Why didn't I take my education more seriously? Why was going to high school more like a party for me? I wasn't never in a gang. Thankfully, I got into the hip hop scene. I was breakdancing. We was DJing, parties. I would say majority of my friends were gang members. Most of my family's gang members. I could have been in a gang at any moment. Was actually accused of being in a gang by police and other people because I was at parties where gangs were at. I was cruising the street where gangs were hanging out. Right. I was hanging out with gang members in high school. That's just where I lived, and that's just where I went to school, and that's just the way it was. I was hustling, I was drug dealing at a time, but never in a gang. My thing was breakdancing and having fun and being the guy who connects people, even at a young age. So, and all that was great, and it helped me to build me to who I am today, but I should have taken my education more seriously. Right. So I spoke about those things. I talked a little bit about going to Desert Storm, and that was scary. Standing ovation, people high-fiving me. Principal takes me out to lunch afterwards, said I did a great job. But I go back, and I'm working one day, and my commanding officer comes out. We're on an airplane, and he says, "Hey, I need to see you in my office." And everybody's like, "Ooh," it was kind of like being called by the principal to the office. And he says, "I heard you got a gift." And I'm like, "What you talking about? You got me a Rolex or something? What's up?" He and I were pretty close. Commander Kroger, he was one of the highest ranking African-American naval officers at that time. I really respected him. He said that the principal from North High School had called him and told him what an amazing job I did speaking to the kids. And he told him that I had a profound impact on the audience. So I was thinking, so what? What does that mean? You know, why am I sitting here? And he said, at that time, a large amount of gang members were enlisting in the Navy and the Marines. The majority of them cannot complete boot camp because they can't conform to military life.
Okay.
So he says, I'm going to assign you to a team called the Navy and the Marine Adopt a School. It's what you're going to do is you're going to go to these schools in San Diego and to some schools in the Los Angeles area where they have a lot of gang members. And you're going to work with gang members that are in high school that want to join the military and prepare them for military life. I'm like, for real? I don't really want to do that. You know, I'm cool where I'm at, you know. I'm not from here. I've encountered some gang members in California. They ain't nothing like like Denver gang members. I don't know. I don't know. He said, well, this is not a request. This is an order.
Oh,
He
wow.
said, yeah, he said, we need people like you doing this work. So they sent me to some training, pretty basic. Really, I don't even know if I learned anything from the training. And I started going Los Angeles, Long Beach area, Logan Heights in San Diego. Them gang members hated me because I was from Denver and who are you? Pretty much I didn't like them. But I met a kid named Nick. And Nick was a Sureño who back then I didn't even know what a Sureño was.
Mm.
He and his brother were executed by their gang. They were both put down on their knees and shot in the back of their head. Nick survived, and he was now in witness protection, and he was willing to testify and give them all kind of information on the Sureños in that area. So I got to know Nick pretty well, and I take him to one day. I said, "Let's go to the beach, Nick." He said, "The beach?" I said, "Yeah, let's go to the beach." He said, "You know, I live here in San Diego. I was born and raised here, and I've never been to the beach." I'm like, "What?" I said, "That's kind of familiar with me. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and people always ask me if I ski. And no, I don't ski." And they're like, "You live in Denver, you don't ski?" I'm like, "No, I never even been to the mountains, to be honest with you, other than for a quick trip up to Mother Cabrini and back home." And he didn't know what that was, but you know, so I can relate. I said, "But now that I live in San Diego, I go to the beach every day, bro, every day."
Mm.
I said, "So let's go." "No, I can't do that. If I go to the beach, maybe some of these guys will be there. They might shoot you and me." "All right, we'll go north, up north, away from here." And they had the witness protection officers. I don't know if they're sheriffs or what they call them, but they followed us. And we were having a blast at on Mission Beach at Belmont Park. And we got off the roller coaster, and he was like, "Man, that was the coolest thing ever." And I'm like, "Dude, you ever been up close to an F-14 Super Tomcat?" He's like, "They fly over my house all the time, but I never been close to one." I said, "Let's go check it out." Long story short, Nick ends up meeting the commanding officer, and he ends up in a jet, and we're turning up the engines and talking about this is what we do.
Wow.
And I remember Nick, he's sitting there, and I'm kind of on the side of the airplane, and he turns and looks at me, and it's the first time I heard every conversation he had told me, "I'm going to die before I'm 18. I'm going to die." And he turned and he had this look on his face that was different. And he said,
Yeah.
"I want to fly. This is what I want to do. I want to fly." And in that instant, he changed, but so did I, because I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to impact a young man like this. To see that life change inspired me, and I've never been the same since.
That I've heard parts of that story before. Um, so to hear some more of the more intimate details, it makes sense about why you do what you do and how you do what you do. like, in the superhero comic books and in the movies, that's your origin story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's fast forward to the last 10 years. That's really when I've gotten to know you. Tell me about about the work that you do, maybe not right now, but what you've been doing over the last several years.
Um, it's actually pretty cool because I was just writing a grant that asked me something similar.
Okay.
So back in about 2010, I was working with my buddy Age Sandoval, who founded the Mix International, and we were doing the hoops and wraps thing that I talked about earlier. We were working with gang members in Sun Valley and a large part of West Denver, and we started to attend these focus group meetings that the city was holding because they wanted to make a build an organization that would bring all the community organizations that are doing gang intervention, gang outreach together and design a program, which eventually became GRID. So,
Mm-hmm.
was going to them focus groups, getting to know some people throughout the city that were doing work similar to us, which I didn't realize anybody was doing the work. When you're doing this work, you're so focused, you don't realize how many people are doing it. And so it was good to meet others that were doing similar things that we were doing and to bounce some ideas off them and kind of build on what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of exciting to be a part of something that was going to be citywide. In 2012, I almost was feeling like this is going nowhere. We're just back to doing what we do. The city called on me. There was a shooting that began somewhere in Thornton and was ended up in a high-speed chase. Some NSMs were flying down Pecos. The police chased them into La Raza Park off of 38th and Osage, right about there. And they had a shootout where they shot and killed two NSMs. And the NSMs had now green-lighted the police. They're like, we're going to kill cops on sight. And they called me. The city called me and said, hey, first of all, can you help us verify that this is even true? And I'm thinking, well, why are you calling me? They're like, you're
Right.
the North Sider. And I'm like, all right. And it was real simple. I went to some NSMs that I knew, and they're like, yep, it's true. OG's got us posted up on corners waiting for police. I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to start a war with the police. That's big stuff.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so next I went into how do we prevent this? How do we prevent more NSMs dying? How do we prevent a police officer dying? How do we prevent this? Because, really them cops were doing their job. These dudes were flying down Pecos, high speed, which is a 2-lane road, um, for miles. And there was guys in the back of the truck who ended up being shot and killed that were shooting at the police while they were chasing them. I'm like, so let's just be real here. Through some talks and negotiations, we got them to back down, and we got the city got the police to kind of, they're like, okay, you guys, we're not going to press you kind of stuff. Just let us deal with this and we'll move forward. And so from that, I then became an outreach worker for GRASP, but my assignment was to GRID.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, GRID was only doing contract work with nonprofit agencies. Did that for 4 years. And then I became one of two, that other guy that you talked about in your intro, one of two first hires in-house at the city as GRID outreach workers.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for 5.5 years. March of 2020, pandemic hits. We go into a meeting at the 303 building. We're just getting ready to start, and security comes in and says, we're closing the building down. Everybody has to go home because of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Get everything you need and take it because you can't come back in the building once you leave. Woo! Talk about a game changer. So we go home thinking, we'll be at home for a week or two. Turned into a year or two.
Right.
um,
I feel sorry for anybody who left their lunch in the refrigerator.
Oh, no doubt.
Well, I feel sorry for facilities who had to clean out that refrigerator, right?
Hmm. So, but immediately, I would say I might have been working from home, which I didn't even know. We didn't even know what we are supposed to. We didn't have even virtual technology back then.
Mm.
Um, I remember all of a sudden Zoom was popular. Well, what the heck is Zoom? Before that, we were doing conference calls, and so now all of a sudden there's Zoom technology and all that stuff. But there was a big fight that turned into a shooting where one adult was killed and two juveniles were killed. And who do they call? Let's call Joe. And so I was moved to first responder status. Uh, Ended up um, being one of I think, the very first outreach worker going out into the community to deal with a shooting, trying to figure out what's the protocol, wear masks, wear gloves, meet outside, don't go inside the house type stuff. And here I am going to a house where there's probably about 25 to 30 gang members who just lost somebody. And I'm asking them, come outside. Can you guys wear masks? And they're all laughing at me. Mask? We ain't wear no mask. Um, so there I am, masked up in gloves and all. And I'm like, this is just a protocol that I work for the city, so I got to do this. And I wasn't even sure what that meant even then. It took a while until it really sunk in. So did that for the city. But during the pandemic time, a buddy of mine called me and he said, hey, there's this grant and we have an opportunity to partner on it. What do you think? And so Leo, Alides, and I wrote a grant together, and we received money from Caring for Denver, and we started the Urban Impact Program. And I slowly, over about a 4 or 5 month period, phased out from working at Grid and went full time to working for Urban Impact as a co-director and then as the COO, training guys to do the work and put them out there. Because even though there's a lot of guys doing the work, there's not enough. We
Yeah.
we need people to do the work. There's just not enough of us. It becomes overwhelming. The caseload gets really overwhelming. Um, After doing that with Leo for about a year and a half, now I just went full time back to the mix. Wrote this grant with the city and Denver Public Schools, and started the work back in May. And 18 months on that first grant, and they're already talking about sustainability and keeping this thing going because the schools are being flooded with kids right now that have gun charges,
Hmm.
anything from possession to attempted murder. And when I tell people that, I don't think they realize that we have kids who have attempted murder that they haven't even been to trial for, and they're already released from custody and sent back to school on an
Yeah.
ankle monitor. And then because they have beef in the community, they start to stack attempted murder charges, or they actually committed murder. So
Right.
we've got kids in our Denver public schools that are one, two, three, four attempted murders that they're waiting pretrial for,
Wow.
which makes them for a very dangerous environment. And I
Hmm.
think that's why I'm here to talk about that environment.
Let's actually talk about that a little bit. Not so much the environment itself, but you are working with some of the young people who are at the highest risk of being involved or impacted by violence. And again, knowing you as well as I do and working with you as closely as I have, I know that you're really good at your job. There are skills and there are techniques and strategies that you employ in order to be so good at your job. And let me, for the audience's sake, let me frame that. When I say good at your job, it's connecting with a young person and lowering that risk of being involved or impacted in violence. And I've witnessed you do that. Can you talk to me and talk to the audience about, I hate to use the word typical because there really is no typical day, but what is a day in the life of Joe Aragon, outreach worker, mentor, violence interrupter? What does that look like when you wake up in the morning and you get dressed and go?
I remember being interviewed to get hired at the city. And I remember one question specifically. It was asked by a district commander who was part of the interview panel. And he said, "Well, we know you're Pastor Joe. We know that you're a minister. How do you separate your ministry from your work with the city?" And I said, "Okay, I'm looking at you, officer. You got a badge. That gives you some authority. You've got a gun. That gives you protection and it gives you more authority. Um, you got a protective vest. You got protection. You got a radio right here that you can call for backup and they'll come like that to your aid. What am I wearing? Got a cool hat, t-shirt, and you're asking me to go into an environment, go into a house that's full of gang members who are all strapped up, ready to ride at any time without my Jesus?" I said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I don't separate the two. I am who I am." So how do I start my day? With prayer. I really, truly wake up every day and I pray for every person on my caseload and for everyone that I might encounter who just needs to hear a word. I pray for wisdom and safety. Then I get dressed up and I leave. And it could start with the early morning meeting. It could start with a visit to the Gilliam. It could start with a home visit because some parent is like, "Hey, you either got to catch me before work or after work because I need them to sign off on some paperwork so that I could work with their son."
Mm-hmm.
And so it could, it could be one of those things. Majority of the time, it's going to start off with me at a school, preparing myself to meet with the student. And so a lot of time during the week, I'm going from school to school, meeting with 2 or 3 students at each school in a private space. And we're talking about, in the beginning, it's just, let's get to know each other. Because they look at me and they're like, "Who's this dude? You don't know nothing about me. You ain't nothing like me." No. So we have to break down them walls because
Mm-hmm.
they've encountered a lot of people who come in and out of their lives. Most of it's systems people who are probation, pretrial, DHA kind of people, DHS, um, mental health workers. They got all these professionals in and out of their lives who are all putting the hammer down on them. And are you going to be another one of them people?
Yep.
Uh, so I got to kind of give my story. This is where I'm from. This is what I'm about. Uh, and kind of sometimes it strikes a chord with them. They're like, "Oh, well, you're kind of like me." And I
Yep.
said, "Exactly." When I sit down with a young person, I look right across them. It doesn't matter to me what their race is, their background is, what their gang is. There's no prejudices with me, and there's no judgments. You made some mistakes, but life is not over. You're not headed to prison. You might be on a road that could lead you to prison, but how do we stop that? How do we stop a commitment or an incarceration at DOC that's going to take the majority of your life? Um, how do we save your life? What if your activity could lead to you? I mean, you think you're invincible. You're going to go out and shoot and kill everybody. Who's your enemy? You're going to go get your ops. Well, you could become a victim too. Did you forget
Right.
that? um, and so, and that was me when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was why I chose not to get on that path because I didn't want to be in prison and I definitely didn't want to be 6 foot under in a casket. And so I do a thing called 5 Roads of a Gangster.
Mm-hmm.
It's a handicap, addiction, imprisonment, death. And the number one thing for a gangster, he could change. He could change his life. He could change his path. He can go in a different direction and he can live. And I always tell him, choose life. Choose life, man. Let me help you. Let me help you figure it out and let's choose life together.
So when you have that conversation with them about the 5 roads of a gangster, and you highlight that fifth pathway of choosing life and saying, "Hey, let me help you." What does that look like? What is that process of helping them? Um, I tend to phrase it, helping them help themselves, right? What's the process of helping them look like?
Yeah, well, first thing I talked to them about, because they're already addicted to a lifestyle of, or they're being in the, maybe even just the beginning stages, because it could be some prevention work that needs to happen, depending on
Mm-hmm,
what level they're at. Um, but where are you at? I usually ask them, are you official? Have you been jumped into a gang? Were you quoted? What's going on with you? How does your gang do it? What's your gang structure? And everybody tells me something different. There's several ways that people are put on in a gang, and we
mm-hmm,
know that. So it just depends what gang. And then once they tell me who they're affiliated with, then I say, do you even know your gang history? Where you all come from? Why you all started up?
mm-hmm,
And majority of these, I would say none of these kids know their gang history. So when I break it down to them, they're like, who are you? Well, how do you know that? I'm like, well, I'm a native of Denver. So I grew up in the neighborhoods when before there was Bloods and Crips. I watched Bloods and Crips form, and I know who those guys were who formed them Bloods and Crips gangs. All right, but I know who they were before they were Bloods or Crips. All right, and because I not only grew up here, I started to do the work here back in '93. So if I'm working with these young people who are in these gangs, they grew up. I had some success. Some of those grew up and they're living life, and they're maybe some of them still are will consider themselves gang members. They're just not active. They're the
mm-hmm,
OGs that are trying to pour some wisdom into some kids. Most kids aren't listening to them OGs type stuff. Um, but once I start to break them down on this is the history of your gang, then it really catches their attention. Like something. You're not just the teacher trying to talk to me. You're not just the counselor trying to talk to me. This guy actually knows something. And a lot of them kids will go check me. They'll go to some people and be like, "Do you know this
mm-hmm,
guy?" Um, Luckily, I've been doing this work long enough that my name's out there in the communities. And so if
mm-hmm.
someone brings me up and they start to ask, someone's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I know him. He helped out my whoever, whatever. He helped them, man, and he's good people."
So you're being a little bit modest when your name comes up a lot of times in these circles, whether it's people who counterparts who are also doing this work, or it's one of the young people, and say, "Hey, you know this dude named Pastor Joe," and the people are going to be like, "Hell yeah, Pastor Joe's the real deal." Oh, you working with Pastor Joe? You better work with Pastor Joe. If you don't, I'm checking you. I've witnessed that where one of the little homies who is trying to run a check on who you are, their OG checks them. It's like, man, you better check in with him. I'm going to check in with him to make sure you're working with him. So yeah, I just want to give you the respect that's due to you on your name and the way you are. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, brother.
I appreciate that, and I give all that glory to God, brother, because He put me in them situations. At a young age, you don't realize when you meet somebody who they're gonna who they're gonna grow to be.
Mm-hmm,
You don't realize that this this meeting with this person that could develop into a relationship, a good friendship, somewhere down the line is going to mean more than just that's someone I say hey to, what's up, every time I see them, well, what's up, you know. If you really take the time to get to know somebody, which doing this work, you get to really know a lot of these people because you
mm-hmm,
really dive into their lives, you get to meet their family, uh, and you really get to know them, and they get to know you. So uh, I believe I was put into a lot of situations that later on down my career have helped me to be safe in situations where someone who don't have that same street credit are not going to have that same safety.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that gives me an advantage that I think is an advantage that comes from God.
I know your faith is a huge part of who you are, and you're unapologetic about that, which I think speaks to a larger characteristic about who you are, is that you show up as yourself. You're always authentic with whoever you're interacting with, whether it's a politician, it may be the mayor of the city, it may be the police chief, it may be OG from one of the hoods, or it may be the a mom, or it may be a teacher, principal, or it's the little homie who you're building connections with. Um, and to belabor the point, one of the main reasons that I really respect you, and I've modeled the way that I move in these spaces after you, and following your lead in that. You spoke about the safety that you're afforded by having those relationships, and those relationships are built off that your authenticity. I want to ask you about the relationships that you build with young people and their families. Doing this type of work, we encounter losses, we encounter challenges and frustration, whether it's a young man getting killed or getting locked up for maybe even killing somebody. How do you take care of yourself mentally and emotionally? I'm going to leave spiritually out of that because I think that goes without saying. I would like to hear how you maintain and persevere and endure.
All right, two things. I'm going to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, One of the exercises I do with the young people, I call it integrity check. All
Hmm.
right. Um, you said something that triggered this thought. Whether I show up and I'm speaking to a politician, the mayor, the chief of police, or a business person, a teacher, a principal, a family member, a gang member, I'm the same person. I do this exercise with the young men. I said, um, list three people who are your best, closest friends, your closest homies. Those three people.
Hmm.
Three people in the school, whether it's teachers, security guard, principal, who just three people who know you the best in the school. Um, Tell me about three people. Um, Give me a list of three people from your family, whether your mom, your grandma, your uncles, whoever, three in your family. Now think about this. Would the three people in the school say the same thing about you that the three best homies would say? Would those three best homies, the three in the school, say the same thing that your family would say about you if they described you? Would it be pretty close? And the answer for these young people is usually no. My
Hmm.
homies would say this, the school will say this, the parents will say this. And then I ask, well, who are you? Who are you? See, you're out of focus. You don't even know who you are. You're this person with them, you're this person with them, and you're this person when you're at home. Um, what we need to do is build young men of integrity where they have focus of this is who I am no matter where I'm at. All right. Someone did that with me a long time ago when I was a young man, and that's why I'm able to do what I do when I show up where I show up. That's really important. Really, really important. All right. And then I forgot your ending question there.
The question is, but let me acknowledge what you just said. At the core of helping these young people help themselves is helping them find their identity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Oftentimes, the behavior that we're witnessing and that we want changed, and I say we as in society, um, the behavior is just a reflection of no identity, or um,
Mm-hmm.
them claiming the identity of who they think they're supposed to be, right? they
Mm-hmm.
they think they're supposed to act this way in certain situations. They think they're supposed to respond in a certain way because that's what the narrative has been told to them of what it means to be a young black man or a young brown Latino man. Like all these narratives are playing, and I so appreciate that exercise, Joe, because it took me going to prison before I recognized that the role I was playing landed me on the stage I was on. And if I wanted to be on a different stage, I had to decide who am I and how do I show up on that stage, and what are the lines that I recite, and become real with myself. And that was the whole start to modestly say it's a very successful life for the most part. We'll go back to the other part of the question is, how do you maintain and work on your mental and your emotional health in this work, because it's so challenging.
So I work hard and then I play hard. All right. So um, from sitting down to playing a game of chess to going out and doing some recreation with my family or going to a nice dinner and just being with my wife and my kids. I love to watch basketball. I was I think watching the Nuggets win a world championship was so cool. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
that's like escape from what I'm doing on a daily. Um, and so it's football season. I've been kind of down on the CU Buffs for the past 20 years, and to see what Dion has done, Coach Prime, I'm like, man, this dude came in and he did something that I don't think anybody else in the entire universe could have done. You know, and there's a lot of people that are mad at him about it, and I'm like, man, you just go Dion, shoot, man. I'm about some Dion Sanders, so
Coach
because
Prime.
yeah, and I'm watching him, and I'm like, man, how do I take what he does to
Mm-hmm.
use it to work with these young men that I'm working with?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's got a lot of wisdom, and what can I pick from him? I wish I could sit down and just talk with him for a while, um, just to learn, and to hear and um, share with him what I do. But how do I take from him back to the neighborhoods that I'm working in?
Right.
Um, and that's really, I guess, professional growth.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting
Mm-hmm.
down and doing whatever it's going to take to take me to another level. Um, to some people, they're like, "That's not really what I'm talking about." I'm looking more for like a beach and a hot tub and all, you know, all that kind of stuff. I get that once in a while too. I do that. We escape as a family and go enjoy
Yeah.
those times. But I think personal and professional growth and development is really important, especially the personal growth part of things. Because,
Mm-hmm.
like I said earlier, I haven't made it to that pinnacle yet. I have not achieved, the mastering of Joe Aragon and who he is. I still got a lot of work, and working on myself. Um, I think it helps me to escape, but it also helps me to self reflect
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
some of my faults, some of my shortcomings, and how do I grow in these areas. So that's really what I do.
I really, 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 really appreciate that answer, because it's almost becoming a theme with the majority of the guests I've had on this podcast so far is a characteristic of humility. And at this point, the audience will have heard me say this one or two times before. I define humility as the ability to know that you still have more to learn, that you still have more growth to happen for you. You could be a dynamic speaker. You could be a great outreach worker. You could be a great politician, but humbleness is not saying I'm not good at these things. It's saying I am good. I'm confident in what I am, and I still have more to go. And I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be coachable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I want to ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll shift into the other segment and then wrap this up. I want to circle back to the question about when you're with a young person and you've laid out the five roads of a gangster, and you're highlighting that fifth road of growth, right? You're highlighting that fifth road of being living and moving forward. And you said, I believe the way you said it is, let me help you navigate this pathway. You said it even earlier, and that is assessing where this young man is in his life and what his needs are. How do you connect them to the resources that they need in order to be successful, or in order to get what they need?
So first off, they don't believe they can change.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy. Um, it's almost. I start with this. Um, do you love your homeboys? Yeah, they're my brothers. Is usually what I get. Those are my brothers. That's my family. And in some cases, it truly is their blood brother. Their
Right.
you know their
Their
family,
first, second, third cousins, right?
mom, dad,
Uncles.
uncles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's their family.
Yeah.
So I tell them I'm not trying to remove you from your family. I got family too. I got hood family. I got
Mm-hmm.
professional family. I got family who are law enforcement. And we can all come down for Thanksgiving and sit at the table together. And there ain't gonna be no one side, two sides. We're family. End of
Mm-hmm.
story. All right. So I'm not trying to take you from your family. I understand that. But does your family love you? Yeah. Do you love your family? Yeah. Do you want to go to a funeral of someone in your family? No. Do you want to go have to watch someone go to court and go to prison from your family? I mean, I'm talking go to prison. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
talking 25 years kind of stuff. Man, one day is too many, but to get sentenced to some years.
Right.
Do you want that to happen to you? I mean, do you wake up every morning going, I can't wait for one of my family members to die so I can go to a funeral?
Right.
All right. Um, no. The answer is no, 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 no. All right. Okay. So that eliminates two roads of the gangster right there: death and prison. You want someone to take a beating or a bullet or a stabbing where they're handicapped, they're in a wheelchair, their their whole life has changed, and everything they thought about doing forever, whether it's being a super gangster or super drug dealer or
Mm-hmm.
becoming a business owner, now their whole life has changed because they have to learn a whole way of living because now they've acquired an injury that's going to change their entire lifestyle. Do you want to wake up and say, I can't wait for that to happen? No, you don't.
Right.
What are the things you want? I mean, and I have you ever seen a one of them homeboys from the hood? He's now 40 years old, addicted to whatever drugs are out there, and he looks like a dead zombie on the street. You ever seen one of them guys? Yep. Well, that guy used to be you. He used to be young and strong and vibrant and could do all the things you could do, might even been better at it than you are. I said, and now look at him, addicted to drugs. He looks homeless, and maybe he is homeless, unhoused at least,
Mm-hmm.
and living on the street. And you walk by him and you show him no respect, no love. You laugh at him. Um, do you want that for your homeboys, for your family? Do you want that life? Do you want that life? No. Then what's your option? Change.
Mm-hmm.
And we start to work. Okay, if you love them and they love you, they're not going to mind you focusing on your education. They're going to applaud you. They're going to be your cheerleader. If you want to play basketball, football, if you want to be a rapper, but rap about something that's going to build somebody up and not tear somebody down, kind of stuff. I mean, there are successful people in the music business that are putting out positive messages, that are bringing encouragement and uplifting people. Not every song out there is about drugs, sex, and killing people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of good music out there. But what is it you want to do? How do we get you on that road of change that not only is going to change and impact your life, but because you're who you are, people are going to follow you and it will change and impact their life. Do you want to lead people to destruction or do you want to lead them to the promised land? Let's talk about it.
Man, I love the answer because what and again, let me say this. This is why I love you and respect you so much, because what you just articulated is what they would call in academia, in the clinical world, motivational interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the button up tie in this tight box of how they teach it in most universities and college. What you just demonstrated is a way to have a conversation with somebody that you've built a relationship with, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
not overlook that you've built a trusted relationship with, and then really pushing them to identify what is motivating you, what is truly motivating you, and then you help them build that identity of who they want to be and pursue what they truly want to achieve out of life, and what conforms with that identity that they've constructed for themselves, man. So look, we probably could talk for hours about how you move in these spaces and why you're so successful in the work that you do. But we don't have time for that today. So there's going to be a part 2, 3, 4, 5 for this, Joe.
I'm down for
Um,
that.
uh, I want to ask 2 more questions, but I want to ask one before we go to the next segment. What's a story that exemplifies? Because I think this is the best question, because I've talked about how successful you are in the space, acknowledging that we're not perfect, and that there are those challenges and those losses. But what's one story that you want to share, that you can share with the audience, that gives you hope for why to continue to do the work that you do, and um, you see where you see yourself going after a win like that?
I got a story. Let's see. So that there's this young man. His name is Abraham. Fifth grader. No, fourth grader. I get called to the school, and they asked me to work with this kid. He's in fourth grade, and I'm thinking, fourth grade, a little kid. He don't need a talking. He needs a spanking. They said, well, here's the deal with this kid, Abraham. He's tried to kill his mother already
Mm.
twice. He's threatened to kill several of the teachers in the building, and he pulled a gun on the principal. Every kid in the school is afraid of him, and he's jumping kids into his gang. And I'm like, who's his OG? Oh, he is the OG. I'm like, he's in fourth grade. All right. So I'm thinking, this little kid, it ain't going. I'm probably not gonna work with him. Um, Probably gonna go meet him and be like, he's this little kid um, that's acting up. But I
Right.
go meet him. They send us. It was after lunch, so the lunchroom was empty. They're like, you guys can go meet in the lunchroom. There's nobody in there. And so he comes in with his backpack and he sets it down and it goes donk. It hits the ground hard. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's some heavy books you got in there, bro. And he's all, ain't no books. And I said, what you got in there? And he opens it up. I don't know. This little kid's just not too bright. He shows me he's got a gun in there. He's got
Mhm.
a 38, a revolver. And I snatch it. And he said, give that back to me. I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, I can right now go and have you arrested right now for having this gun in the school. I said, or you can sit here and talk with me. And if things go well, you're not going to jail today. And he said, I'll just kill you. I said, shut up. I said, I got your gun. You can't kill me. I said, I'm too big. You can't kill me. I'm way bigger than you. I said, man, I'll just put my hand on your neck and hold you. You can't do that. I said, I'm not a teacher. I'll
Yeah.
bet. I'm just a civilian. Going to threaten me. Shoot, little boy, I'll spank you. I took off my
Yeah.
belt. And he just looked at me with big eyes. Oh, I said, I'll spank you like you've never been spanked before. Oh, so I said, all right. I'm just playing, bro. I'm just playing. And I said, you don't even know what to do with this gun, man. What are you doing? You're just going to end up shooting yourself. And he said, I know what to do. He said, let me show you. And I'm like, nope. I took the bullets out the gun.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then this little kid proceeded to show me how he takes the gun apart, cleans it, puts it back together, and he's like, if you give me them bullets, I'll show you how I put the bullets back in. I snatched it back from him. I said, no, sir, no, no, no. So he knows what he's doing. I said, who taught you that? He's like, my dad. I said, where's your dad at? Prison.
Mm-hmm.
I said, do you love your dad? Yeah. Do you miss him? Yeah. Starts to tear up. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep this gun. I'm not going to tell nobody. I end up turning it over to district police and they get rid of it. But I said, but here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come visit you every week. I said, every week I'm going to come to the school and I'm going to visit you. I said, if you don't get in trouble anymore at school or at home, at the end of the school year, I'll take you any place you want to go in the world. And mind you, I'm thinking, this kid ain't going to make it a week.
Right.
All right. So he says, deal, shakes my hand. So week goes by, don't hear nothing from the school. I show up to visit it, and they're like, man, what'd you do to Abraham? I said, I took off my belt and told him I was going to spank him. They just laughed. They didn't think I really did it. Well, whatever you did, Joe, keep on doing it. So weeks are going by. Now months are going by. And the school year comes up. They're like, man, Abraham is the best kid in the school. He's the biggest turnaround. I'm like, man. And mind you, we didn't talk about much. He's a kid. I can't even keep his focus on more than he's just happy to see me most of the time, you know. And so he did it. And I said, Abraham, I'm really proud of you, brother. I came to visit you every single week, and every single week I got a good report. And I said, how did you do it? He said, because I knew you was coming to visit me. I said, do you like when I come visit you? He's like, it's the best part of my week. I'm like, oh, that's cool, bro. I said, now I start to worry, though. I'm like, this kid's going to want to go to Disneyland or something. It ain't going to be nothing nice, right? And I said, so I got to hold up my end of the deal. Where would you like to go? So Abraham sweetens the pot. He says, can I bring a friend? I said, bring a friend. He said, I might be a little nervous being there by myself with you. It's cool. We're at the school, but going somewhere with you, it's just me and you. He's like, no, I want to take my friend. I said, all right, we'll bring your friend. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'll be broke, And he said, I want to go to McDonald's. I said, what?
Wow.
He said, I want to go to McDonald's. I'm like, you sure? You don't want to go to Elitch's or Lakeside or something like that? He's like, nah, I just want to go to McDonald's. So I took him and his friend to McDonald's. We walk in, and I said, what do you guys want? And the friend's like, I'll have a number 5 with the large Coke. Runs, back then they had playgrounds at the McDonald's. So he runs the playground. I said, Abraham, what do you want? And he's just looking. I said, you don't know what you want, man? He said, I ain't never been to McDonald's. I said, all right, go with your friend. I'll order you up some food. And so I ordered for him. I went in there and let them play on the playground, eat their food. Man, you would have thought them kids was at Disneyland.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It was dope. Following school year, I got the opportunity to go do some work at my alma mater, North High School. And so I left, and I kind of lost touch with Abraham. So a few years go by, and I'm working with the chaplain at the Gilliam, and I start to go on Saturdays to do church with the kids in the Gilliam. And
for the audience, the Gilliam is a juvenile detention facility. Yeah, here in Denver.
So I'm there, and I've been going for about probably a year now. So one day I walk in, and there's Abraham, but he's not this little kid anymore. Now he's looking me eye to eye, and I'm like, Abraham. I mean, he still looks the same, just stretched. I said, what you doing here, Abraham? He tears up, and he tells me, I killed somebody. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, I killed somebody. I'm like, oh, dude, my heart just, it just got me, And I was like, man. And I know you asked for a success story, but this is kind of a story of why I keep long-term relationships, all right? Because Abraham said to me, if you had continued to come and visit me, I would have never ended up here. He said, I missed you so bad. And me and my mom moved around and I didn't know how to find you. He said, and finally I just did what I did.
Yeah.
And he was close to 18 at that time. I don't know if he ended up at YOS or if he actually went into DOC.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to keep up with that, but
Yeah.
that was, but it made me determine in my heart that I'm not in it just for a short term. Even if they're on my caseload short term, I always tell them my cell phone number. I've never changed my cell phone number for that very
Mm-hmm.
reason. Since cell phones have come out, I've had the same number for over 25 years now.
Right.
I will not change my number. If you need me, call me. And then with the invention of social media and Facebook and all that, I'm able to reconnect or stay connected with a lot of people through social media. I recently, a young man posted on my page that he met me when he was 15. He's 41 now, and just thanking me for all these years of pouring into his life, and that now he's a father and he's pouring all those things I poured into him into the lives of his children.
Mm-hmm.
So grateful for social media for that reason.
Yeah. Again, this conversation has been really dope because hearing you articulate how the academic and the clinical ways of working with young people and with people in general is played out in a practical, authentic manner in which you do. So, for my listeners, I want you to hear. If you don't hear anything else that Joe talked about, and you probably heard me say this before, the number one proven way to do youth violence prevention is to be a caring, trusted adult consistently in a young person's life. Not even a young person. We could be talking about somebody, an adult who is a recovering, dealing with addiction. You could be talking about somebody who is suicidal. You could be talking about somebody who is challenged with domestic violence. Being a caring, trusted adult consistently in that person's life is the number one strategy and tactic to preventing violence and happening in that young person's life or in that person's life. So, Joe, thank you for sharing that story and man, dropping all the wisdom. We're going to shift real quick here to a segment that I call "What's the Word?" And what's the word? I give you a word or a phrase, so the audience can learn more about who the guest is. In this case, Pastor Joe, and get to know that Joe is just well, I'm gonna say just like you, but he's a human like us. So you're going to complete the phrase or respond with a word or a phrase of your own. Okay.
All right,
All right. Ready to go?
let's do it.
Success is.
Oh, you got to hit me with that right away. Success is completing something you started.
It is.
Family.
The one thing I want people to know about the young people we work with is
They're human.
my favorite food is.
Mexican hamburger.
Oh, okay. We're going to pause real quick because I just have to let the audience know that if you're ever in Denver, you have to seek out Joe because he has a spot over on the north side that makes the best Mexican hamburgers in Denver.
Mm.
Um, man, you and I are gonna have to catch lunch now. You just made my mouth water, honestly. All right. Um, favorite book.
I'm going to say the book of Acts in
Okay.
the Bible. I mean, the Bible is
Hmm.
my favorite book. I mean, I like a lot of books, but I read daily the Bible.
Okay. And you say Axe is your favorite.
Acts is my favorite. Yeah.
Favorite form of self care.
Prayer, prayer and meditation. Yeah.
Favorite television show.
The Denver Nuggets, NBA TV. What's up?
What's your favorite movie?
I love the Godfather saga.
Mm. You're the second guest who has mentioned the Godfather saga, and they said the first one was their favorite out of all of them. Do you have a favorite one out of the trilogy?
The second one is my favorite.
Same here. Same here. My guilty pleasure is
Binge watching some shows with my wife.
if I wasn't doing the work I do, community violence intervention, my career would be
I'd be a retired Navy guy. I would have done a career in the Navy and retired, and I'd be doing whatever
okay.
right now. But yeah, I'm at that age, retirement, man.
All right, well, you are at that age, but you're the first guest I'm going to ask to give me another answer. Let's say that you're getting up every day and you're doing what you love. What besides this work? What would it be?
Um, wow. I don't even know anything else, but I would say I always wanted to be like a DEA agent when I was a kid.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I thought I knew what your answer was going to be.
What'd you think?
I thought you were going to say a DJ.
Oh, that's a hobby, bro.
Yeah,
That's just something I do. That's another stress reliever.
yeah,
Music.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, my why is
My baby girl who's grown up. She's my why. She changed my life.
I am.
A man of God.
All right. And my theme song is
Oh man. Marvin Gaye. I come up hard, baby.
okay. All right, all
All
right, all
right.
right, all right, all right. Man, Joe, I've really, really, really you have no idea how appreciative and grateful I am to let people hear one of our conversations.
Oh
Um,
man, I'm honored, brother. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
conversations with you is food for the soul. It always re-energizes me, and is always a space where I learned something. And I'm just grateful that you given me this opportunity to share your insights, your wisdom with people out here who are hopefully, well, not even hopefully, people out here who are are in the mix of it. And again, no pun intended, but they're in the
Hey,
mix.
that's why we
Yeah,
call it the mix, brother,
the mix. Yeah,
because we in the mix.
I look at you as being the walking definition of what a credible messenger is, and anyone who has listened to this episode and heard your story and how you show up and how you work with our young people understand exactly why I view you that way. So with the podcast being called The Credible Messenger, with me recognizing you as a credible messenger, I want to give you the opportunity to close this episode out with a final message for the audience.
Oh man, um, all the love you showed me, brother, it's mutual. Um, Let me just say that I'm grateful for our relationship, our friendship, our brotherhood, and I learned from you as well, bro, and I appreciate
Yeah,
you. All right. You're one of the few people I call brother, and I mean it,
yeah,
brother. All right.
yeah.
Message I have for the people: um, be a vessel of grace. We all have mistakes in our lives in our past, and we all have the potential of making a mistake that could be life changing if we're not careful. So be a person of grace and understanding. If you got to judge something, or if you have to judge somebody, it's probably going to be because they committed a crime or an offense against you. And so it's impossible to not judge in that manner, but have a heart of forgiveness as well, because to carry that around too long will turn you to a dark person
Mm.
and it'll burden you. You got to let that stuff go. Um, and everybody deserves to have someone reach out to them, have a hand extended, and help them along the way, no matter what their offense was. Because, like I said, we're all capable of committing some kind of offense. So live a life of grace and treat people gracefully.
I love it. Thank you, sir. It was you and the third musketeer, our trio of outreach, Troy Grimes,
Mm.
who was also, I had him on the show last week. It was the two of you who really taught me the meaning of grace. For a really long time, I thought grace was the same as forgiveness, and I learned from the two of you that it's a whole different thing. It's powerful. So
Hmm.
I have incorporated that into my philosophy of the world, and it's only right that you leave us with that. How do people get in touch with you?
My email, joe.aragon at thamyx.org, is a great way. You can look me up on social media. Lots of people reach out to me that way. I have a page that's the mix page, and I also have my personal page. Either way is fine to reach out.
Okay.
Takes a little longer to the Facebook page. That's the mix page because it
Mhm.
goes to our information box and then it gets sent to me. It's not direct. And then my phone number is it's public and it's never changed. 720-363-6450. I don't mind people reaching out and just introduce themselves through the phone. If you leave a voice message, if I don't answer, I will return your call within the hour, depending on if I just started a meeting or I'm just ended a meeting. But I will respond. I'm not one of these people who has a phone box that's so full because you don't ever answer his messages. I answer my phone and I return calls. So 720-363-6450. I'd love to hear from you.
All right, Mike Jones. Brother, once again, man, I really appreciate you, even though you shame me about my voicemail box, but it's all good.
I didn't know, bro. I didn't know.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Man, we got to do this again. Thank you again for showing up and showing up the way you do, brother. You have blessed my life and blessed the lives of the listeners. I'm gonna follow with you so I can get a good Mexican
Oh,
hamburger
bro,
real
let's
soon,
do it.
man.
Yeah.
All right. And for my listeners, thank you. If you made it right here, I know you are feeling richer. Pastor Joel dropped some jewels. Please pick those jewels up, incorporate them into how you are doing your community violence intervention work, your primary, secondary prevention work, even just how you're interacting with the people who you call family and friends. Use some of the jewels that he dropped, and it's going to make your life richer. That's it for this episode of the Credible Messenger podcast. We will have another episode coming very soon, and until then, peace.